Hello, everybody. I'm John Fawcett in for Lou Dobbs on today's episode of The Great America Show. Well, the House of Representatives this week defeating a resolution to hold Merrick Garland in contempt of Congress for all his corruption and collusion with the Biden regime. The Biden regime has a new level of corruption. This time, it's with the White House doctor. Our guest today is Chairman James Comer. He's the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, and he knows more about the tentacles of the Biden crime family than perhaps anybody in this country or perhaps the world. Mr. Chairman, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So you've got some new subpoenas out this week, I hear. Can you tell us a little bit about them?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the three White House aides we subpoenaed just in the last 24 hours. We've all known for a long time that Joe Biden wasn't mentally or physically capable of being president. What we haven't known is who's been pulling the strings, who's been covering up and concealing the fact that Joe Biden wasn't able to perform his daily duties. Who's been writing those postcards that say, stand up, sit down, smile, and shake hands with the person you're having a press conference with, then stand there and be still, and all the stuff that we see, that no one else would have to read on a cue card to know what to do. And we determined it's these three staffers. So they're unknown staffers. They've certainly never been confirmed by the U.S. Senate. But the question is, number one, have they been covering up the president's health? And we pretty sure we know the answer to that. And number two, have these three no-name, low-level staffers been operating a shadow government? Have they been the ones that have been calling the shots through a Manchurian president, which would be Joe Biden? And that's why we're bringing them in. Then I've asked for the White House physician, Dr. O'Connor, to come in because he just a few months ago released a report stating that Joe Biden was in excellent physical and mental condition. We want to bring him in because we have a lot of questions as to what he based that report on that's on the White House website that the American people have all been led to believe was accurate. We know it wasn't accurate, and we wonder, is the reason that Dr. O'Connor misleading the American people about the health of the president because he was one of the Biden family associates on an influence peddling scheme with AmeriCorps Health.
Right. So according to the reports out this week, a Parkinson's specialist evaluated Joe Biden as part of his physical, is what the White House is saying. But, I don't know how often it is that during an annual physical, you see a Parkinson's doctor, number one, and number two, you see him 10 times over the course of 10 months. One time, a 7-hour-long meeting going till midnight. I don't think I've ever been in a doctor's office past 5 o'clock. Those guys like to go home. Is there anything you could tell us that you've uncovered in this quest for truth and honesty in exposing the collusion of the Biden regime?
Well, we're gonna bring those four people in and ask them about it, especially Dr. O'Connor, because he again is the White House physician. It's the American people's business to know what kind of health the president is. HIPAA laws shouldn't apply to the president. Everyone in America needs to have confidence that the president's healthy and up to the job. And what we believe has been going on is there's been a cover-up. We believe, and more stories are coming out in places like the New York Times and Washington Post, where Biden staffers have said, yeah, he's been sick a long time. We didn't think he should run for re-election. Well, that's counter to what the doctor said. That's counter to what his aides around him, who have been shielding him from his cabinet secretaries, from other staffers, and from the media. We have a lot of questions for these people. We're going to find out. With respect to the Parkinson's expert, all we know is this doctor's been to the White House several times, but we found that he's went to the White House several times when Biden was president too. So, we don't know anything about that, but certainly when we bring in Dr. O'Connor, that'll be one of the first questions we ask about.
So you've been investigating the Biden crime family, we'll call them, since the beginning of the 118th Congress, the end of the 117th Congress. You laid out your roadmap. Did you ever think it would span the tentacles of corruption, the webs that these people have spun? Did you ever think it would have spun to a doctor in the White House?
No. And the only reason we knew about the doctor in the White House, I didn't even know who the White House physician was. But when we brought Jim Biden in, the president's brother, for a transcribed interview, we asked him the same question we asked Hunter Biden about, why we asked Hunter Biden, how did you get on the board of a Ukrainian energy company when you have no background in Ukraine or energy? We asked Jim Biden the same question. How did you get involved in a healthcare scheme when you didn't have any background in healthcare? And he referenced then Dr. O'Connor was a close personal family friend. Dr. O'Connor helped open some doors. Dr. O'Connor wrote a letter and has been a close advisor on the AmeriCorps health scheme, which I think is still going through the court process. And I believe Jim Biden has a lot of liability, not just financial liability, but personal liability, criminal liability. And then we look, once we realized O'Connor wrote that letter and we start looking into that, Sarah Biden mentioned Dr. O'Connor in a deposition as well.
Wow.
When she gave. Remember, the Bidens have been in trouble for decades. No one's ever done anything about it because there's always been a cover-up. So O'Connor's quickly risen to a person of interest, primarily because he lied to the American people about the health of the president. But the fact that we found that he was involved in one of the influence peddling schemes may answer the question as to why he would mislead the American people like that.
The thing that's most alarming to me and highly peculiar is you've had all these Biden family associates come in. You've had members of the Biden family. When you cross-examine what one Biden told you and another Biden told you, how do their stories fare? I mean, are they pretty consistent? Are they, wildly apart? What are you seeing when you're talking to a Jim Biden, a Hunter Biden, a Devin Archer, a Tony Bobolinsky? I mean, are the stories all coordinated, or is this just going to eventually blow up to be, everyone pointing their finger at the other guy?
That's a great question. Bobolinsky was the only honest guy in the whole litter, and that's why he probably never did actually consummate a real deal or a real transaction with the Biden family. He was too honest, so they got rid of him. But everyone else had opening statements that were leaked to the press before the depositions would start. And they were all consistent because I believe they were written by the Biden legal team or the Biden White House or somebody. So the opening statements were all consistent, saying, Joe didn't know anything about it. We haven't done anything wrong. Joe didn't know anything about it. But once you start questioning them, and that's why I wanted to have everyone in for depositions versus public hearing, where you have an hour at a time to press these people for answers, unlike 5 minutes a clip in a public hearing. And what we found was Jim Biden and Hunter Biden's stories were very different. And in fact, one of the criminal referrals that we issued on Jim Biden was because Hunter Biden, when he did his deposition, testified that something Jim Biden said wasn't true, that Jim Biden lied to Congress, which is a felony. So I think that history will show that what Devin Archer said, what Eric Sherwin said, what Hunter Biden said, what Jim Biden said, wasn't consistent on a lot of things, especially when they were asked about specific questions about specific LLCs, specific shell companies, specific wire transfers. That's when there was discrepancies. And also when Joe was involved. Was Joe at this meeting? Well, I couldn't recall. We got that a lot. But now we've proven that Joe was involved in every one of the schemes.
It's pretty surprising. You'd think that such a professional level of crooks, back in the 70s and 80s in New York, the mafia all had their stories lined up. There was one guy who was going to take the fall for everything. They had their stories all lined up. You would think with such a sophisticated, I guess it may not have been so sophisticated operation these people were running, that they would have had their stories together. We're talking with House Oversight Chairman James Comer, and when we return, we're going to take up a new shadow White House Chief of Staff. Chairman Comer might be upset to find out who it is. We're coming right back. Stay with us.
Wellness Company and their doctors are medical professionals you can trust. And their new medical emergency kits are the gold standard when it comes to keeping you safe and healthy. This medical emergency kit contains an assortment of life-saving medications, including ivermectin, Z-Pak. Rest assured, knowing that you have emergency antibiotics, antivirals, and antiparasitics on hand to help you and your family stay safe from whatever life throws at you next.
We're back. We're talking with House Oversight Chairman James Comer. Mr. Chairman, before we went to break, I had teased that there's a new White House Chief of Staff or acting Chief of Staff. He goes by the name of Hunter Biden. He's reportedly been sitting in on meetings with his father, with advisors, and other top-level members of his cabinet. Anything you have to say on this? Have you heard about this and the level of credibility of it?
I've heard about it, and I heard it from the New York Times, the same New York Times that would write editorial after editorial blasting me for spending so much time investigating Hunter Biden that they would defend Hunter Biden and say, well, Hunter Biden's just a recovering drug addict. He doesn't have anything to do with the government. And then the New York Times breaks the story that Hunter Biden is the de facto chief of staff right now, that he's taking high-level meetings and things like that. Well, that's the straw that broke the camel's back with the Democrats. You know, the same Democrats that have attacked me and said, oh, we haven't found anything damaging about the Biden family. They've known all along. They've been complicit in this, like the mainstream media and everyone else, that Hunter Biden was always a central figure in Joe Biden's world. Joe Biden told the American people there was a wall between him and his son's financial dealings. That was not true. That was one of the biggest lies Joe Biden told. They were in on everything. Hunter Biden's been living in the White House. Hunter Biden lived in Joe Biden's house in Delaware when Trump was president. Now Hunter Biden's in the Oval Office taking meetings on behalf of Joe Biden. And Hunter Biden shouldn't be allowed through a TSA line, much less allowed in the White House making policy decisions and national security decisions. I mean, it is a joke. And I think that report by the New York Times was the last straw that will go down in history as the straw that broke the camel's back. In other words, that was the final straw that required the Democrat elite to step in and say, Joe Biden, it's time to go to that assisted living facility. It's over.
See, I mean, you and your staff, presumably have a massive staff over at House Oversight, and every deposition you do, you have staff in there. Are they required to get any sort of level of security clearance?
I have staff with security clearance. When we go and look at something that the FBI had or the CIA had, I could only take the staff with me down in what's called the SCIF that had national security clearance. So a few members of my senior level staff have security clearance, but there wasn't all that much that we needed to utilize those staffers. There were some things, obviously. If Hur would have cooperated with us, Robert Hur, and told us specifically which documents Joe Biden had mishandled, then I would have used those staffers certainly for that. Because, you know, one of the big questions that was left out of the Hur report was, were any of these documents that Joe Biden mishandled, that he had in his possession illegally, were any of these the documents that we believe are classified documents on some Hunter Biden emails to the owner of Burisma? And we never could get that answer. And then when Hur closed the case, you know, he put that line in, and I think intentionally, to say Joe Biden would never be prosecuted because he was an elderly looking old man. Right. That's like the flashy silver thing that all the conservative media took off. Oh, Hur says Biden's incompetent. I was furious over that, because the discussion and the debate should have been about exactly which documents were in those possessions. Were these specific documents that we found in an email exchange between Hunter and the Ukrainian oligarch, were they on there? Because if so, that proves Hunter Biden was going through those classified documents, showing it to these people around the world that were sending him money to prove that he had value once Joe Biden left the vice presidency. Look, my dad may not be in office now, but he's the front runner to be president in 4 years. And in the meantime, I've got all these classified documents I'll show you for the right price.
You know, if the prerequisite to getting away with crime is being, 75 years old and, slipping a little bit, I think everyone should go down to their local Apple store and pick up some iPhones and, go to the bank, pick up some free money on the house. I mean, it's insane. But if your last name is Biden, I mean, you're exempt from FARA laws, you're exempt from paying taxes, and now apparently you're exempt from getting security clearances to sit in on top level discussions. I mean, we're talking national security, we're talking China, we're talking Russia, we're talking Iran. I mean, It's truly insane. And nobody really knows actually what Hunter Biden is doing right now. What is Hunter Biden doing to make money? What's he doing to make ends meet? Last we heard, he was still living out in California and living a lavish lifestyle, driving the Porsche, living a lavish lifestyle with his wife. Where's Hunter getting money from right now?
He's getting money from Kevin Morris. We know that. We believe that he's gotten in excess of $7 million, rapidly approaching $8 million from Kevin Morris, the Hollywood attorney. We brought Kevin Morris in for a transcribed interview, and guess what card he played? He said, "Oh, well, I'm Hunter's lawyer, so I'm protected by attorney-client privilege."
Right.
That's how he got out of answering a lot of specific questions. But we know that he's given Hunter, he's been paying all Hunter's bills. But press reports have reported, because the press is actually starting to report on our investigation now, a year after the fact, but they're starting to report on. Even Chuck Todd mentioned my report today, and I thought, well, my God, how things have changed in the last little bit. But the press reports are that Kevin Morris has cut Hunter Biden off, because if they see that Joe Biden's not going to be president anymore, why would they continue to flush money down the commode? And I think there may be some validity to that, because I've been on TV a lot in the last week or so, and I've said things that normally Abby Lowell, Hunter Biden's high-priced criminal attorney, would go on TV and blast me over, threaten to sue me and everything else. He's been radar silent. And I thought, you know what? He may not be getting paid anymore. If all the people, whether they be the Chinese Communist Party or the Hollywood attorneys or the special interests that have been paying Hunter Biden's legal bills and Hunter Biden's lavish lifestyle, if they see the end is near for Joe Biden, then they're going to cut Hunter Biden off, because he has absolutely no value.
It's funny. We saw this week Hunter filing another appeal to his Delaware gun case, and being rebuffed again by the courts, for filing an appeal incorrectly. Abby Lowell's supposed to be the superstar attorney, high profile, presumably making a few $1,000s an hour, and he's making a lot of mistakes. So it looks like Hunter's in a little bit of trouble in that case. But one of the biggest issues we've seen since we've started having you on the show and covered your investigation is the media, and you mentioned it. None of them want to report the truth. Everything is after the fact, like you said, and it's sugar coated to that it's not as bad as you think it is, right? Well, one news outlet is finally holding someone to the fire, and it's a day late, $1 short. CBS News announcing this week they're ousting a top executive for blocking, that executive is Ingrid Cyprian Matthews, for blocking Catherine Herridge, who I hold in regard. I worked with her at Fox News, one of the greatest investigative journalists we've ever seen, for blocking her from covering the Hunter Biden story. What do you think now that the media finally wants to, as the 118th Congress comes to summer recess and comes back for, a month and a half of work, what do you think that they finally want to start covering your investigation?
Well, I never thought there was any love or respect for Joe Biden by the mainstream media. I always felt like the reason they covered for Joe Biden is because they hated Donald Trump. And Joe Biden, in their eyes at the time, was the only person who could beat Donald Trump. He had already beat him in one election. They felt like he's our best chance to beat him in another. After that debate, the mainstream media realized that Joe Biden was not going to beat Donald Trump. So they have turned on Joe Biden. They have, in the beginning they said he's a good, honorable man. He just needs to pass the torch. And as the days pass by, they're not saying he's a good, honorable man. They're being critical. And now here we are on about the 8th day after the debate. Chuck Todd and CBS News, and they're starting to report on our investigation that they had previously reported was no evidence and hadn't had any wrongdoing by Joe Biden. They're starting to say he's got a lot of liability. Chuck Todd said this. Chuck Todd said that, I think he called it the Comer investigation or Oversight investigation. He said, there's a lot of liability for the Biden family in there. They really need to step aside here. That's another chain around Joe Biden's neck. And I thought, my goodness, the last time I talked to Chuck Todd, I was on what's his show, Meet the Press, and he was attacking me for having the audacity to investigate a good honorable man like Joe Biden. Well, he realized that Donald Trump's going to be president if Joe Biden's the nominee. So they're desperate to get rid of Joe Biden. And I think if Joe Biden hangs on another week or two, they're going to start reading our reports that we published that they refuse to read. I think they're going to start putting them on big, bold print on the TV screen. I mean, they want Joe Biden out of that race, and they're going to do whatever they can. And I think the best thing they can do to get him out of the race is start covering what we've been reporting and publishing over the past year.
For all intents and purposes on this show, we refer to Meet the Press as Meet the Marxists. I think it's a lot more fitting based on their clientele and who's watching that show. We're talking with House Oversight Chairman James Comer, and we return. The GOP has a 65% chance of winning the House in 2024, according to a new poll. We're going to take that up with Chairman James Comer when we return. Stay with us. We're coming right back.
Wellness Company and their doctors are medical professionals you can trust. And their new medical emergency kits are the gold standard when it comes to keeping you safe and healthy. This medical emergency kit contains an assortment of life-saving medications, including ivermectin, Z-Pak. Rest assured, knowing that you have emergency antibiotics, antivirals, and antiparasitics on hand to help you and your family stay safe from whatever life throws at you next.
We're back. We're talking with House Oversight Chairman James Comer. And as I said in the beginning, this week, the House Republicans helped defeat a contempt resolution for Merrick Garland, which would fine him $10,000 a day. 4 Republicans, Rep. David Joyce, Mike Turner, Tom McClintock, and John Duarte. Mr. Chairman, what was this vote for? Was it right for those 4 Republicans to vote it down? How can we start holding these corrupt Biden administration officials accountable for all the destruction they're doing to this country?
Well, we've already held him in contempt of Congress. This was another level of contempt that hadn't been passed in a century. I think there was uncertainty on how it's going to be carried out. I know they went from going from the sergeant at arms arrested him, which wasn't going to happen because he's got Secret Service protection and the Department of Justice security, to was fining. There was never really any mechanism set up to be able to determine who was going to actually collect the fines and all that. Look, I voted for Luna's contempt bill, inherent contempt bill. I will vote for anything to hold these guys accountable. But it's hard to get to 218 in our conference. And Jim Jordan and I were telling Luna that. I mean, it's very difficult.
Right.
I wish it weren't. I wish we had already cut the FBI building out of existence. I wish we had cut the DOJ's budget. I wish we had eliminated Merrick Garland's salary. I mean, there's lots of things we can do. Impeach Mayorkas, impeach Joe Biden, but the votes just haven't been there. And that was always the case with this inherent contempt. I wish it were different, but that's the way it is. So I wish they had voted for it. Anything we can do to send in a message that we're serious about holding them accountable. I'm glad that we've already held Merrick Garland in contempt, because the next attorney general can prosecute Merrick Garland the way Merrick Garland's prosecuted the Trump people who were held in contempt by Congress. So, I wish we'd gotten the votes on that today, but I wasn't surprised that it failed.
Like you say, there was no mechanism to collect it. But don't these Republicans, it's not the 4 or 6 same every time, but a lot of the same names. Mm-hmm. Why is Mike Johnson not whipping these people and saying, listen, something is better than nothing? Because you know what? It sets a bad precedent. When you have James Comer out here, spending weekends working 365 days a year, when you have Jim Jordan out here working 365 days a year to do all this work, and you've got 3 or 4, 5, 6, some of them, some have already left Congress, to get good lobbying jobs or, wherever they've ended up as advisors on boards of the directors. Why is Mike Johnson not sitting there saying, listen, we need to set a precedent so that these people don't think we're messing around when it comes time to bring down Hunter Biden or James Biden or the White House doctor. The Democrats had no problem doing it to Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon for doing absolutely nothing. It was a total BS committee. Everyone knows that. We now know it was even worse than we originally thought with Nancy Pelosi knowing everything that was happening that day. Why won't the Republicans grow a backbone and say, we need to unite on this to let people know we're not messing around?
I think we have 220 or 221 Republicans. We have about 5 to 12 that are always the usual suspects that you can never count on when you need a vote for accountability. Now, they did vote to hold Merrick Garland in regular contempt, and they did vote for my impeachment inquiry to certify that several months ago. But when it gets to impeachment, when it gets to cutting the budget and things like that, real meaningful ways to hold people accountable, just the fact there's some members that you can't count on. And I wish that weren't the case. Jim Jordan and I have met with them. We've presented to them. Our staffs have presented to them. We've given them everything they want. And then, there's just some people that just don't want to go that route for various reasons. And I wish it weren't the case. So, one of the things that Marjorie Taylor Greene talks about is we need to win this next election, November. We need a few more Republicans up there so we can account for the half dozen, the dozen that sometimes get weak kneed on us when we try to make a tough vote to hold someone accountable. I don't think it's a tough vote to hold Merrick Garland accountable. It was not a tough vote for me to eliminate funding for a new FBI building, but for whatever reason, there are a few Republicans that it appears that is a tough vote.
And it wasn't a tough vote for the Democrats to hold two elderly men in contempt and send them to jail. I mean, these people have no heart. They have no soul. They have no brain, quite honestly. It's like these Republicans, these 4 or 5 that we mentioned, they come right up to the finish line and then they just quit. And we've heard it from other people before. Tim Burchett, I think, said it, comes time to vote. They're all in. It comes time to vote. And someone walks in the back of the cloakroom and says, hey, you might not want to take that vote. Mm-hmm. I would. That's my biggest question about Congress, and I'd love to come one day and figure out what the hell's going on.
If you figure it out, let me know. I have questions too.
We spoke about the January 6th committee. Senior U.S. intelligence officials are back. I think it's some of the 51 intel chiefs from the first time. But they say that Russia is trying to influence the 2024 election, and you'll never guess who it's in favor of: President Trump. I mean, this is the same playbook from 2016, the same playbook from 2020. What is wrong with these people? Are they not embarrassed?
They should be, and I don't think the American people are buying it. Russia. Trump does a good job making sure that everyone knows that Russia was a hoax, and that if anything, it's China. And the Democrats would have had more credibility if they had said China was trying to influence the election, because China is trying to influence the election for Joe Biden. But the reason the Bidens never could invoke China is because they took $8 million from the Chinese Communist Party. I mean, that's a fact. We proved that in our investigation. So he then reverts to Russia, which, the Democrats are obsessed with Russia. They still believe the laptop was Russian disinformation, even though it's proven it wasn't. They still believe Adam Schiff's Steele dossier was true, even though that's been proven to be false. They just, Democrats are obedient followers. Republicans are independent thinkers. It's easier to pass legislation with obedient followers than it is independent thinkers. And they have embedded in the minds of their obedient followers that Russia is trying to influence the election in favor of Donald Trump. They believe that, just like they believe that they should be wearing masks right now because of the of the COVID virus. They just, you tell a Democrat something, if Obama or someone tells them something, then they believe it. They don't have the independence to go and fact check it or research it on their own. They just believe it. The media, the Democrat National Committee, the Biden White House, they have told the Democrat members of Congress that Russia was involved in the election to try to help Donald Trump, and they believe it.
If the laptop was Russian disinformation, I'd love to see what other documents Russia has that they're not releasing to us, including and not limited to pictures. Yeah. It's truly remarkable. You mentioned the American people are starting to catch on to it. A new AP poll finds that 60% of Americans, adult Americans, say that President's son, Hunter Biden, it was right for him to be convicted on the felony charges, gun charges. 57% say it's good for him to go to prison. Meanwhile, 46% approve of Trump's 34-count Manhattan felony. Couple that with 65% chance of the Republicans holding the House. How do you proceed forward to get the messaging through to finish out strong these next few months going into November?
Well, we've got to turn out and we got to vote early. I mean, the old politicians in Kentucky that I remember listening to when I was a kid, when they would travel around to the rural areas like where I grew up and give the old stump speeches in front of the courthouse, they would say, vote early and vote often. Well,
Right.
The Democrats have got that down, and the Republicans have never learned that. A lot of states have changed election laws. Now, I feel more confident in this election being fairer. There's not going to be the massive number of mail-in votes that there were the last time, but there's always going to be mail-in votes. If you're elderly, if you're in college, if you're in the military, you need to vote by mail, and you need to get that done early. A lot of states like Kentucky, where you used to vote on one day, on election day, now you have 3 days to vote. In places like Tennessee, you have 10 days to vote early. We need to vote early. We need to make sure, the first day you can vote, go in and vote, and then the next 9 days or the next 2 days of early voting, we need to make sure our family and friends go and vote. That's what the Democrats do. They call it ballot harvesting. We tend to wait for whatever reason until election day and the last minute and vote, and we get behind.
Yep.
So I think we need to get in our minds that it's okay to vote early. We just need to go out there and not only vote ourselves, but we need to make sure everyone we have any connection to, a family, friend, whomever, votes as well.
In Pennsylvania, you said vote early. Pennsylvania, I think on election day, going into the election, Dr. Oz was down to Fetterman. I think 1 million votes on early voting. It's just impossible to come back after getting numbers like that. But, you said the mail-in ballots. Hopefully, they'll slow down a little bit. You had the SAVE Act this week, which the Democrats are vehemently against, and I can't seem to figure out why they would be in favor of illegals attempting to vote in our election. I have an idea, but, I can't figure out why. As we wrap up here, Mr. Chairman, can you give us an idea on when your investigation into the Biden crime family will wrap up, how it will wrap up, and what we can expect as for criminal referrals for who, when, where, when, and why?
Well, it seems like every week something new comes out. We've got the doctor coming in now who was involved in the influence peddling schemes. We wonder if the reason he was misleading the American public about Joe Biden's health was because he had liability. The crooks want Joe Biden to stay in office because he's always been able to protect them. If he's not in office, the Biden family, the associates, the White House physician, no one's there to protect him when he's not president. So we're going to continue to get the proof to the American people. We're going to continue to issue criminal referrals. And my goal now is to hopefully hand all this investigation off in its conclusion to the next attorney general, who will then take steps to hold him accountable. And I think that we've already done the investigations. We've got the footnotes, we've got the bank records, the emails, the text messages, the sworn testimony from transcribed interviews and depositions. We've proven that there have been many crimes committed by not only the Biden family and their associates, but also bad actors in the government, in the deep state, who were involved in the cover-up. We want all these people to be held accountable, and I look forward to hopefully being in the majority, being chairman of the Oversight Committee with the Trump administration and you, Attorney General, and working together to hold them accountable in a real court of law, and hopefully send them to prison, the ones to prison that need to go to prison.
So do you think Hunter Biden and Jim Biden will see criminal referrals before November?
I mean, we've already issued criminal referrals to the Department of Justice on Hunter and Jim, and I can foresee a few more coming along. So I think that we've done everything we can do to be able to allow an attorney general to hold things accountable. The way Congress is set up, we do an investigation, and if we find wrongdoing, we give it to the U.S. Department of Justice. Unfortunately for us, we've got Merrick Garland in charge of the U.S. Department of Justice. So we can hold on to this stuff. We've already made it public. We can give it to Merrick Garland. He can flush it down the commode. We've got copies. We'll give it to the next attorney general too.
Mr. Chairman, if someone came to me in a week and said, this whole last 4 years has been a joke, and Steve Harvey comes out and announces it, I wouldn't even be surprised because of just all the amazing things we've seen in masking. I mean, a first family that's nobody thought anyone was more corrupt than the Clintons, and now you have the Bidens. I mean,
well, the Clintons were smarter.
Right.
The Clintons were smarter than the Bidens. Yeah.
Right. And we all knew. I mean, I think it was Barack Obama who famously said multiple times that Joe Biden's not the smartest guy he knows. Right. Chairman James Comer, thank you so much for joining us today. You're doing the Lord's work. Be well, my friend.
Thank you.
Thanks to Chairman Comer, and thank you for being with us today. Be sure to join us tomorrow for the Great America Saturday Show and Sunday for the Great America Sunday Show. Monday, our guest will be brilliant investigative journalist Lee Smith, and we hope you join us for that. Have a great weekend, everybody. May God bless you, and may God bless America.